Hi guys, and welcome back to Killing Time with Rogue, and as always with me today is Hannah. If you are watching this on YouTube, please follow our Twitch channel at Killing Time with Rogue. We are going to be live streaming once a month, and our next live stream is on December 20th, 2020. A little Christmas present for you guys, and a great way to end 2020.
Last week, we left you with the Sauter family mystery, where a family with 5 children disappeared after a house fire without a trace. This week, we have another juicy mystery for you, and it's the Smiley Face Killer.
This is probably a stretch, but do you think that this is what the American Horror Story cult series was based off of? I know you haven't watched it because you're not much of a horror person, but spoiler alert. After Kaya kills someone, he would draw a smiley face on the wall or somewhere close to where their body would be.
Actually, that's not far-fetched at all. This story is a mix between a conspiracy and a murder mystery.
Cool. Our story starts 23 years ago in 1997 with the death of Patrick McNeil. McNeil went missing in February of 1997 and turned up dead in the river near the Bay Ridge section of Brooklyn in New York in April of 1997. When his body was found 2 months after his disappearance, there was no evidence of deterioration. After the autopsy report, it was concluded that his death was accidental. There were no deformities or evidence of foul play. But how did an athletic 21-year-old student end up in the river without any evidence of foul play?
Honestly, it is very strange because McNeil was not only the victim was not the only victim of this killer or this cult that was of athletic build and overall in great shape. Over a 20-year span between 1997 and 2008, there was reports of over 45 college-aged men being drowned and found with either alcohol or some type of drug in their system.
It has been reported that there were over 300 people of the same build that were found by being drowned, with only 45 of the bodies being reported to have the signature smiley face graffiti within 2 feet of the corpse, whether where the corpse was retrieved or presumably dumped.
A more recent case of this smiley face killer occurred in 2017. A young man by the name of Dakota James was found floating in the Ohio River 40 days after his disappearance in January. His death, too, was ruled an accidental drowning by the Allegheny County Medical Examiner's Office. After further looking into the case, a group of retired detectives and gang experts believe that James is one of the hundreds of victims of the Smiley Face Killer.
The detectives and the gang experts believe that the Smiley Face Killer is actually a gang of serial killers that met on the dark web to try and create a signature trademark. The internet is a vast network that allows people to connect with one another all over the globe. With having this connection, it allows multiple serial killers to tag their murders. That way it confuses law enforcement to think that the killer is only one person who has the ability to travel to multiple locations in a short amount of time, rather than a whole gang of people killing in the same manner.
If this is the case, and it is a gang of serial killers, James unfortunately drew the short end of the stick. He fit the bill of every person who was a target for those murders. He was smart, athletic, popular, college-aged, and white. But most recently, there was an additional information that over half of the victims were homosexuals.
And this is so fucked up to me because how can you hate someone for who they love? I understand disliking, your sibling's girlfriend or your best friend's significant other, but to the extent of physical harm, or in this case murder, is just messed up. That would be
sad.
like someone coming after me because I prefer tall dudes with dad bods.
Yeah, it's a sad thing. Just love who you love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you're the one that gets to go home with them, not them. So they just jealous.
Exactly. Bitches be jealous.
Bitches be jealous. Continuing off the homosexuality targeting, there has been many instances with true crime and cold cases that people who are trying to harm individuals of the LGBTQ plus community would trick them into thinking that they're hooking up for the night, and they would be at a club or bar and drug them to murder them, meaning no resistance, no struggling was documented in multiple coroner's reports.
See, I do not watch as many true crime documentaries as you do, but while researching this true crime, and more than 30 of the victims, there was evidence of GHB, or the date rape drug, in their systems, which would make sense considering the information that you just gave us. I just don't understand why someone would willingly give another person this drug substance.
People are crazy and unpredictable, and it's sad. But what's even more strange about James's case was that although he was found 40 days after his disappearance, his body was not decomposed enough to, result in those 40 days in the water. Meaning someone kidnapped him, kept him hostage until they were done with him. Even with being in the river for 40 days, there was no visible marks from the typical water turbulence. However, there was a healed ligature mark around his neck indicating he was strangled before death.
According to how the other smiley face murders were conducted, there will be a smiley face painted on the closest structure to where the murder took place, or where the target is ended to end up. During this investigation, the police found not only 1, but 11 smiley faces on the Roberto Clemente Bridge, which was the closest structure to where James's body was found. It is not known whether the graffiti was there prior to James's death or not.
Criminal profiler Pat Brown calls this theory ludicrous, and based on what evidence we have, he states it does not make sense. Brown also states in a Minneapolis newspaper that the smiley face is not an unusual symbol, which, I mean, he's not wrong. I wrote it a bunch of times in my notebook while taking notes for the podcast, and I mean, I know I did it in high school, and both of our stuff was covered in random doodles and drawings. People typically do it because they are bored or looking for a creative outlet with stress or anger.
Many of the coroners and detectives denied the notion of reopening the cases they oversaw, and refused to change their conclusions about the victims. This did not deter Gannon, who was one of the detectives on his case. He remortgaged his house and maxed out all of his credit cards to try and solve these cases for the grieving families. Unfortunately, allegations of sexual assault and a bout of cancer forced him to stop the investigations for over 18 months. Once returning to the investigations, after all of his efforts, only one case was changed from accidental drowning to homicide. This case was Chris Jenkins. He was found 4 months after his disappearance, floating down a river with his arms crossed in the funeral pose.
Props to that detective to go that far to give answers to the family.
Yeah, that's definitely going above and beyond.
A+ to him. The Minnesota police chief that was originally investigating Jenkins' disappearance and death had to apologize to the family and was quoted saying, "When we are investigating a case, we obviously do the best we can, but we're going to occasionally make mistakes. In Chris Jenkins' case, we did make a mistake, and for that, the Minnesota Police Department and I want to apologize to the Jenkins family."
But it's literally your job to not make a mistake in this situation, so how can you be okay with just apologizing for it?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to read that and say that oh well we tried, pats on the back, you mean it's hard.
In this interview, the police chief alluded to the fact that they had a source for where the Jenkins body was dumped into the river, but did not directly say where they determined that the body was dumped. A spokesperson for the Minnesota Police Department, John Elder, when asked about the case, only says that the case is, quote, open/an active investigation, end quote, and still urges anyone with information to contact the Crime Stoppers of Minnesota even 10 years after Jenkins' body was found.
Unfortunately, the ruling for the most recent case related to the Smiley Face Killer Dakota James, a different ruling in his case has not happened. In an interview, James's parents were recorded saying, quote, "I want people to know the truth, that he was a good person and not some 23-year-old child that got drunk and decided to pee in the river and fall in on his own. Someone did something wrong to him, and we need to find answers. It's not just about my son. It's about helping other families out there that need this information," end quote.
And this is a commendable action. I don't know if that's the right word, but it sounds good, so I'm sticking with it. That she wants to help other families that have been stuck with this tragedy, rather than settling a vendetta with her son's murderer. Neither of us have children, which is, in hindsight, a good thing, but I cannot imagine how hard this would be for her. I know how angry I felt when my best friend from college passed away, last year. Over a year later, I'm still very mad about it, that it happened. He just graduated college, had a dream job lined up that him and my boyfriend were going to start working on, and his life was tragically taken away. So I can't imagine how they felt when their son, who was in college in his senior year, was found in a river, also deceased.
It's sad, Yeah,
I cannot imagine, because, even a year later, I'm super mad about it. And this was her son. Like, mine was just my best friend from college. Not.
There's so many what ifs, so many questions.
Yeah.
Something that's even more strange about James's case is that when his body was found, his parents were not allowed to see his entire body. They were just allowed to see the ankle with a distinctive tattoo. And as you know from being an EMT and a crime buff, the coroner makes you look at their face unless it's severely damaged or disformed. In the autopsy report of James, the only thing that was reported was a healed strangulation mark and evidence of GHB, the day rape drug, in his system. So why wasn't the parents allowed to see his face?
That is a great point. Like you said, unless his face was extremely disfigured or damaged in some hideous way, they have to identify him by his facial features. That's like rule one, in corpse recovery, rather than just his ankle tattoo. Tattoos are 1 in a million, but there are many times I've seen people with the same tattoo or an almost identical tattoo on the same area of their body. Since his disappearance happened in Pittsburgh, many of the tattoo shops up here are run specials. Like for Friday the 13th, you can select from a sheet and you can get that wherever. So that might have been the situation.
Great theory. But his parents were allowed to see the photos 17 months after their son's body was found. And during this examination of the photos, they found ligature marks on the son's throat and contacted a pathologist to examine the photos and help them understand the marks that were presented on their son's throat. The pathologist determined that these ligature marks were more recent than when their son went missing and was slightly healed.
The Allegheny County Medical Examiner, the police, and the district attorney would not respond to the new information found by the pathologist. The Smiley Face murders became better known to the public in 2008 when Gannon, DeRate, and Gilbertson, which were all detectives on the Smiley Face conspiracy, held a news conference in New York to discuss the 29 deaths found in 9 different states. In a recent interview held in 2014, Gannon was quoted saying, quote, "The level of sophistication of the group is a lot greater than we had imagined. Now we know they communicate with each other on the dark web. We know there's surveillance and counter-surveillance." End quote.
3 of the current suspects of these murders are alleged members of a gang. It is believed that they stalked their victims, and then the incident with James could have been 2 things. Either the gang tried to abduct him and he escaped, or they were doing a test run. The detective that was on the case for Dakota James was also on the case for Patrick McNeil's, the first victim of the Smiley Face Killer.
Although McNeil's case was ruled as a drowning, Gannon decided this conclusion was not enough and investigated more. Eyewitnesses told Gannon that a car with a man and a woman was double parked outside the bar when McNeil emerged. The car followed McNeil as he walked down 2nd Avenue towards 90th Street. The access to the river where McNeil drowned in was not easy to get to. He would have to walk several blocks and climb over a 4-foot fence to urinate into the water.
Which, that's crazy because, I mean, if they were that drunk like they were said in the tox reports, wouldn't it be hard to climb a 4-foot fence?
I mean, unless he, walked
just to
to
pee?
it. Yeah, that's...
If you're that drunk, you're not sitting there climbing a fence. I'm just, in my opinion.
I mean, unless he was so plastered that he, walked up to it and stumbled over it. But even then, he probably would have broke his neck, and that would have been viewed on the autopsy report.
True. Gannon checked the NYPD's Harbor Patrol and determined that there was no way that with how the currents of the water was flowing, that McNeil's body would have ended up in the East River. And over the next 15 months, 2 or more men around the same age vanished. One was found where McNeil's body was reported to be found, and the other was found in the Hudson River around 138th Street.
In 2006, there was a widespread investigation across the country, which is how they determined that the smiley face graffiti was present around the area where the body was either dumped or was projected to turn up. Although many people say that the smiley face graffiti is common, there was something different about how these specific smiley faces were tagged.
The worst part about this is that there was no jail time, no one's in custody for the murders. These parents are left with many questions, no justice. These victims are, they have no, justice. I mean, they are deceased, but the family needs closure. That's the best that anyone can have in these situations, is to find closure. like last week, the segment, the parents just wanted to know what happened to their children.
That is currently all the factual information that we have on the Smiley Face murders. Most of the stuff that we researched was either opinionated to where it was a biased thing or just random blogging of what people think happened. Now onto some theories that we have about the Smiley Face Killers and who the culprit may be. Do you have anything?
It is not a far-fetched thing to think that these people are using such a not like a drastic way of killing these people and getting away with it. It's not hard to believe that someone could be out there doing this, like, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So do you think these people have to be, like, I don't want to say higher intelligence, but, like, more detail-oriented?
They really have to think this out because, like, in the case of Dakota James, they found him in a very, public place with houses across the river. So either they dumped him before that and the current took him, but I feel like with all, like, the fact that they're finding no evidence besides, like, strangulation marks in the drug system, they have to be somewhat thought out and planned in this aspect. It's not just like a random attack and then leaving the body in the river. So there's, like, some kind of specific, what's the word?
Specific?
No, sophistication.
Okay.
Sophistication about their planning.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think that they were dumping the bodies in the water because as the water's flowing that it would erase the DNA present on the corpse?
I don't want to give them all that credit in thinking that far ahead in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe. They probably just thought, like, if they, like, killed them and left them in a ditch, that would be more obvious as a murder.
Mm-hmm.
But, they probably thought out, like, oh, if they're found in the river and they have water in their lungs, then they're going to chalk it up and say, it's a drowning because they were drunk or they had drugs in their system. I don't think they thought it out to be like, oh, we're going to get rid of the evidence. Some of them could have.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them could have not. Not all serial killers are brilliant.
Yeah, that is true. A lot of them are messy and they get caught very fast.
Oh, yes. Those are the fun ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely think it's, like, gang-related activity. Like an informant. How sometimes they'll send copy people into prisons to, like, look after a certain person who got caught. I think maybe it's the same situation. Like, there's people planted in a specific area that are part of this gang activity to conduct these murders.
Well, like you said, the dark web, the dark web is a vast pool of weird and, messed up people.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't surprise me that if they have, like, a little group chat, probably named, like, Smiley Face Killer with, like, a little smiley emoji, like, like, it would, like, and they're all just like, yo, bro, did you see what they're like, yeah, bro, we saw you on the news, like, good job. But, like, I mean, it's not that, like, far of a reach to connect, like, these people talking on the dark web and then doing it and then, be like, hey, I did it. You know? Or they're saying it's a gang. Maybe this is like an initiation kind of thing that they have to.
Ooh.
And that they're sticking to a certain story just to, like, keep it, like, copy and paste. That's a theory.
Yeah, I kind of like that theory. Like you have to do this or we kill you and your family type situation.
Yeah, like, they could lay it all out, like, exactly what to do to make it exactly like the rest of them. And be like, you want to be in this gang? Here's this. And, like, they're getting away with it because, gangs are, they are careful on what they do, so they can still do their thing. And a drowning, like, killing people and making it look like drowning wouldn't be that, far-fetched.
That is true. It's an easy way to cover up something, especially with them targeting specific body build and specific people.
Yeah.
So.
Now, were they victims of opportunity? Possibly. You know, you never know. Like, they could have just stumbled upon them, but like the certain details of each one, like their body type and like, you know, their age and their like sexuality, and like it all just matches up. So I don't think they were like, you know, they're victims of opportunity, but they could have been, and there might be more victims, you know, that, you know, haven't been discovered and it's been too late.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we don't know if there's a different type of victim pool, and these are like the only ones that are turning up. It's
That is
like
true.
a bunch of what ifs in this situation. Lots of like, it could be this, or it could be that, or it just could just be accidental drownings.
That is true. Some of them could honestly be that, and then those smiley faces coincidentally there. But I don't know. It seems fishy that there's like over 300. I don't know. It seems fishy.
There's just a lot of them with the same exact like death ruling and, you know, certain components that make it seem like a string of serial killers. So it's just sad that, you know, no one, like, you know, there's all these like questions out there and no one's getting closure.
But that is all I have. Do you have any closing thoughts on this mystery?
I think I said all of what I think.
Okay.
No.
Alright guys, well tune into our next YouTube video on Wednesday at 5 p.m. for our next segment on the cold case that happened close to our hometown. Thanks for tuning in with us today, and make sure you subscribe if you're watching. You know, we only have 6 subscribers, but we got like 35 views. You guys gotta help us out. But thank you for watching us. Follow us on Twitch at Killing Time with Rogue for more murder mysteries, cold cases, and conspiracy theories.
Bye.
Bye,
Closing
guys.
statement.
Oh my god. We will see you guys next week. Have a great week.